Hello! Today we are going to talk about how to increase mental effort so our time becomes more valuable. If we go back to our comfort zone analogy, there are two ways we can acquire new land. We can have other people do it for us, or we can go fight ourselves. These are called passive and active learning. Passive learning is all about getting outside information inside your head, either by reading, sitting through class, watching YouTube videos, or any other external source. Active learning is entirely in your head. You manipulate the information, fit the puzzle pieces together, have insights, and see the big picture. Just by the quality of the words passive and active, you can probably guess which one is going to do you more good. And so we come to our first principle. Active learning requires more mental effort than passive learning. This is simultaneously a good thing and a bad thing. It is a good thing because mental effort is what makes our time productive. Learning something actively is just fundamentally different in your brain than learning it passively. It is a bad thing because mental effort is not always enjoyable. Because mental effort and active learning have both good and bad qualities, we get our three mindsets about what you do learn. You tend to be avoiding when the pain of the effort weighs heavier in your mind than the benefit. Tolerating people normally avoid the effort, but if the benefit is forced upon them or required, then they will do it. If you can look past the effort and fixate your thoughts on the benefits, you will be seeking. Even though I consider active learning is better, passive learning is still incredibly important. To give you some insight, I will show you two extreme examples, someone who learns only actively and someone who learns only passively. We will start with only active learning. Active learning is basically the act of expanding the borders of your current comfort zone. Because all of the work is based on high mental effort, the quality of the knowledge is great, and the person has full mastery over everything they learned. However, they will end up knowing incredibly little. They have to rediscover and redevelop every insight that other people have already toiled over. If we zoom out on the comfort zone, and you need to actively learn something that is here, you would have to carve the entire path there yourself, which might not be possible in one lifetime. Imagine how much harder math would have been in first grade if instead of just learning to multiply, you had to develop the very notion of multiplication itself. Isaac Newton said, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulder of giants." Without passive learning, you are refusing the giant's help, and as such you will never reach the cutting edge of any field of knowledge. Now, people who refuse passive learning across the whole spectrum of their lives basically don't exist. But some people do have isolated pockets in their lives where they refuse help and want to do it their own way. On the other end of the spectrum is someone who only ever passively learns information. On the surface, they might seem brilliant. If they have taken the time to passively learn a whole bunch of information, they might know a lot of things and be able to answer a lot of questions. However, like I mentioned before, information learned passively just doesn't have that same quality to it. It is missing a sense of mastery and nuance. It is also likely to leave a bunch of holes in understanding because they weren't necessarily spoon-fed all of the information they needed to know. However, the absolute biggest problem with someone who does no active learning is that they are completely useless to the world. New insights, developments, technologies, and anything else mankind has ever developed came out of active learning. By definition, you can only passively learn something that someone else took the time to actively learn. Someone with no active knowledge is basically just a warehouse of other people's knowledge. You can interact with them like Google. Except Google has already far surpassed the usefulness of any one person. Real people are much more likely to fall towards this end of the spectrum than the other. It is common for people to quote-unquote know a lot about something but not be able to do much with it. This is the reason behind why calling someone book smart is much more of an insult than a compliment. Whereas street smart people actually know how the world works and can operate in it. This is also the lament of business owners hiring new graduates. It is really common for people to graduate college but not be able to apply any of the information they passively took in over 4 years. I'm prone to this end of the extreme as well. I will read books cover to cover or spend hours watching science YouTube videos, only to realize I didn't get very much out of them because my brain was pretty much turned off. Since either extreme doesn't work, where do we go from here? Do more active learning than passive learning. Every time you are handed a piece of information passively, put in the work to expand upon it and integrate it into the rest of your thoughts. Back to this zoomed out comfort zone. If you need to learn something here, use passive learning as footholds, but every time put in the mental effort to truly understand the material and gain the mastery you need. You avoid having to reinvent the wheel every single time, and you gain the usefulness that comes from having thought about it and seen how everything fits together. It is the best of both worlds, and it allows for quick and thorough learning. To help you better understand what to do in the active learning component, a great framework for that already exists. This is Bloom's taxonomy. You can pause and read this if you want, but I'm going to explain it more in my own terms. Bloom's taxonomy basically looks at the depth or quality of your knowledge. The lowest level is remembering. This is different from what I call your retention, or how slowly your knowledge fades away, which we're going to talk about more in the video on studying. If you have something at the remembering level, it means it is just an isolated fact floating around in your head. You don't understand it and you can't do anything with it. When you move up to the understand level, we are at least making some progress. You can see how the puzzle pieces fit together and explain it to other people. Where things really take off is once you have reached the apply level. You can actually take your understanding and turn it into something that can benefit the world. You are now surpassing Google because you are doing something fundamentally different. Beyond apply, I don't believe that analyze, evaluate, and create specifically have to be done in that order, but they are all good things to work towards. So how do we actually use this? Active learning is using your own head to expand the borders of your knowledge. Whenever you receive a piece of passive information, you put in the mental effort to actively expand that knowledge horizontally and vertically. If you passively learn something that is just a fact, your job is to see if you can understand that fact and see how it fits into the bigger picture. If you are given a piece of understanding, you can move horizontally and understand it more thoroughly from more angles and tie it into other knowledge you already have. You also can and should move up and start trying to apply that material. If you have a way to actually apply the material in real life, then do that. However, walking through hypothetical scenarios can be extremely powerful too. If you are given an application to a problem, you can backtrack to see if you even understand it in the first place. Move horizontally and see if you can find other uses for the same application or similar applications. And you can also move up and analyze and ask, is this a good or a bad application? What makes it good or bad? What principles does it adhere to or violate? So that is the formula. Get a piece of passive information, then expand it as much as possible in as many ways as possible, but preferably up since the higher levels are more useful. I'll give you a few examples of what this looks like in real life. In class, your teacher or professor is providing passive information. You can try to stay one step ahead of them, seeing if you can connect the dots before they show you how they connect. You can compare what they are saying to past information you have learned, or mentally run a hypothetical scenario where that information would be useful. When you have great insights from this, you can actually take notes on your own insights in addition to what the teacher is saying. If you hit a stumbling block that you don't think you can overcome by just sitting there and putting in mental effort, ask a question that gets that extra bit of passive information you need. It isn't just class though. When you are reading a book for the sake of learning, stop every couple pages and actively think about what you just read. It slows your progress through the book, but increases the usefulness of your learning. Too many people never get the passive understanding from books into the active application range. Sitting around and just discussing stuff is also amazing. You are both actively learning and each get to passively learn from the other person, coming to a better mutual understanding and having more room for creative insights. Lastly, and my favorite, you can actively learn when you are just laying on the couch staring at the ceiling. Again, I am not attempting to make a comprehensive list. You will get to figure out the things that work best for you. Only 2 principles today, but they are incredibly impactful if you can learn to do them. As you do more active learning, the whole process becomes more tolerable. You will have to learn how not to give up on yourself, though. It is very common for people to only put in 10 seconds of mental effort before deciding they won't figure it out and resorting to passively learning the answer. Don't bail yourself out like that. Learn to be okay with the struggling. When you do give up and bail yourself out, instead of going straight for the full answer, find as small of a hint as you possibly can to get past your roadblock, and then do the rest with more mental effort. The hardest thing for you to wrap your mind around will be this. Mental effort is your friend. Learn to seek it out. Your homework is to go back and actually do the homework I gave you. If by chance you did do them, do an extra layer of them. All of my videos are nothing but passive learning. If you are serious enough to keep watching all of these videos, then be serious enough to put in the work and actively learn from the videos too. If you want an extra challenge, for the rest of these videos, go to the Summary of Principles page at the end, pause and read them, and then try your hand at some active learning before watching the full video. That way you can get in some active learning, do some passive learning based on what I'm actually telling you, and then go back for another round of active learning afterwards. Next time, we're going to look at the task analysis, which is a framework other than Bloom's taxonomy that can help you figure out where to spend your efforts.